Thank you for inviting me to the MFD Galaxy. It's wonderful to see a lot of people here, presumably soon after your lunch session, right? So let me start by saying I know it's a little dull in the post-lunch session, but may I just request all of you to at least clap once so that I know that you're all... So wonderful to see all of you, and I think I have the stage with me for the next 20 minutes to 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And I'm going to talk to you about how an ancient literature in Tamil is connecting with our lives, about the managerial concepts, about the leadership concepts, more importantly, the concept of wealth as outlined in one of the ancient literatures of the world. It's called Tirukkural. How many of you do not know Tamil here? Okay, quite a few. So I think I need to spend the next couple of minutes just giving you a very brief introduction of what Tirukkural is. Maybe the others don't require it. Tirukkural is an ancient literature written presumably about 2,200 years ago. So we are very fortunate to have this kind of a literary piece coming handy to us just in the format that it was written in. So in a lot of languages, you may have ancient literature, but the problem is the usage of it in the modern context or to our lives. Either because the words would have moved a lot away from the original meaning, or conceptually, we might have really moved a lot ahead. One of the interesting aspects about Tirukkural, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes, then I'm going to get into my topic. Just because I saw a lot of hands raised saying they don't know Tamil. So I think I just need to spend the next couple of minutes telling them why we think that this is supreme. Some of you might be wondering that the Tamils always do it. They think that their language, their literature, their culture is really supreme. I'm not here to say anything of that. Every language is special, every culture is unique, and every literature or a wisdom piece in any language is of immense value. But something unique about what I'm going to talk to you today, which is Tirukkural, is I found something very interesting, which is what I wanted to share with you. We all read Tirukkural when we were in school, started in second standard or something like that. So we were asked to read like 3 or 4 couplets. Tirukkural has 1,330 couplets. So we were all asked to just memorize 2 or 3 or 5 in every class, and that's all we knew. And then the Tamil Nadu government started writing couplets in our buses. So a lot of us who use public transport, we used to see this man with a beard and a saint kind of a look. His picture was there and a Tirukkural was written, most of which we didn't understand. The meaning was also there, but the meaning itself was quite difficult for us to comprehend. That's how we started. But as we grew up, something really struck us about the wisdom of this man who wrote these couplets 2 millennia ago. One thing that I really liked about this man talks about governments and governance, but he does not mention even the name of a single king or a minister. You will not find it. In contemporary literature of Tirukkural, many other Sangam literature as we call it, I'm not going to get into literature, just give me about 30 seconds and I'll be out of it. In contemporary literature, you will find that the poets constantly appreciating a particular king who patronized that poet. But what is interesting in Tirukkural is that you won't find the name of even a single king. He will talk about kingdoms though. He will talk about the importance of water resources, rivers and seas, but not a single river's name is mentioned. He will talk about mountains, but not a single mountain's name will be mentioned. The only thing that we know about him, in fact, this name, Thiruvalluvar, the name of the poet who wrote this epic, was only named by people who came later. He never even gave his name to the epic that he wrote. His name is not there. Of course, his religion is not there. He talks about God, but there is no mention of a specific God. You won't even able to vaguely make out, because he says that this God has these attributes. Probably it's a God belonging to this religion or this religion. No, you won't be able to name which God or which religion. No caste is mentioned, no creed is mentioned. So in a way, Tirukkural becomes timeless, because this man was careful enough not to identify himself with anything. So it has a universal applicability. And the wisdom travels with us. So with this brief introduction, I'm just going to get into my topic. I understand that the entire investment community of the country is sitting here. So I'm very glad. For a very brief period in my career with the bank that I worked for, I was an investment banker. Thankfully, it was a very brief period for me. Then I quickly moved into something which you all dread. I moved into compliance after that. So then I was in compliance, and I was in control management. I was in customer service for quite a long time. And the last part of my stint with the bank that I worked for, I was heading the retail operations for core consumer operations for the bank. So I was into operations. So an interesting that happened is, I got this role. And obviously I was on top of the world, right? So I'm going to head a huge operation setup for a multinational bank. So my boss, my boss's boss, and his boss, and quite a few people just called me to celebrate that I've got this new role. And that celebration happened in this hotel. So it was an ITC. No, don't clap as yet. I have not come to the climax. So I was quite happy, and I'm just going to take over the role. It was the first meeting with some of my bosses to understand what are their perspectives and what are the controls and what operational improvements that are expected from me. That day is something that I will never forget. It was November 8th, 2016. That was the date. If you all remember the date, that was the date on which demonetization was announced. So I was here in ITC Chola, trying to understand what my job is. I had to understand, because I've had a stint in compliance and controls and customer service, and I moved into operations. To me, it looked like a very natural backward integration. However, on the day that I was inducted into the role, we just ordered rotis and some butter item, some paneer item we ordered. Before we could take the first, we could raise the first glass as a toast, or we could taste the first bite of our rotis and chapatis, then our phone started blasting, and somebody said, TV paranga, watch the TV. That's when we heard the announcement about demonetization. So that day itself, we worked till 3 o'clock in this very hotel, just with one simple question: how to shut down the ATMs. Because the ATMs cannot dispense certain denominations, and there was no way that the particular brand of ATMs that we have deployed at that point of time could be short supplied for specific denominations. So the only option was to shut down the ATM. So how do we shut down our hundreds or thousands of ATMs across the country was what we started the debate with, and that was my stint with being the operations head, which followed by a lot of regulations and compliance and compliance. But in hindsight, when I've come out, I moved out of the bank a couple of years ago. But in hindsight, I think that even that stint was easier as compared to my very brief stint as an investment banker and a counselor. I acknowledge that you're all doing a very, very difficult job. So, kudos to you and congratulations to you. But how difficult can it get Of course, it can be very difficult, isn't it? So some of my investment bankers that I use for my own investment services, they fix time with me, and the discussion starts off by they talking about how do the geopolitical factors affect the investment platform. So within 2 minutes, I want to tell them, honestly, I don't care what Mr. Trump is doing. It is not going to affect my life personally. Can you tell me how is this going to affect me personally? But I understand starting that conversation, getting a client to trust in you, especially if it's a new client, is a very, very challenging part of the roles that you are doing. So when we do some of those tough roles, sometimes the difficulty is that you believe that you are doing your best. You believe that you are asking the right questions, you're giving the right solutions, but somehow it is not happening. That meeting is not successful. It is just getting postponed. It is not getting closed to a sale. So what happens? You get into the expectation mismatch loop if you're working for somebody with your boss. So your boss wants something, there is something else that you are delivering. You believe you are doing your best. Fortunately or unfortunately, your boss doesn't think so. So how do you really fill this expectation mismatch is one of the biggest questions that people in workforce face today. Some people are lucky. It clicks for them. Or some people are smart enough because they're always ahead of the boss. They try to solve the problems of the boss, so somehow it clicks for them. Congratulations to them. But not everybody is like that. Everybody, minus these outliers, are caught up in this loop as to, I'm hitting every ball. But guess what? Some of them are really not falling into the place. So, with this background, I'm going to talk about how some couplets from Tirukkural literally made a difference for me. One thing that I always admired about this great literature is that, so I don't know, most of you would have seen the picture of Thiruvalluvar, who wrote this epic. Most certainly he's a saint. Of course, he's not declaring that he's a saint. As I told you, there is absolutely nothing about his own identity that he reveals. But you can at least, from what he writes about renouncing life, about being without desire, a lot of us have come to a conclusion that he's a saint. But this saint is the one who has given the best advice for me, personally, and as a banker, about wealth. So pardon me because there are some of these couplets I will say in Tamil, but of course I'll immediately give you the translation. So this is the one that I really, really, really like. He says, Seiga பொருளை செருணர் செருக்கு அறுக்கும் எஃகு அதனல் கூறியது இல். What it means is that Seiga பொருளை is like a command. He says that make money. So coming from a saint, it's a little surprising, right? He's supposed to say that money does not make you happy. Money does not give you everything in life. These are the things that you would normally expect from a saint, right? And whoever says that money does not give you happiness is somebody who has already made his money. Remember that. Anybody who has not yet made the kind of money that he or she wants to make is never going to tell you that money is not everything. I remember the famous ad from MasterCard. Mr. Ajay Banga, when he was the head of MasterCard, this famous ad came. It said that money can't buy you everything, but little more money is good for everybody. I think that's exactly the place that we are all in. So here is Valluvar who says, Seiga Purulai. It's a command. He is not giving you any alternatives. He is not giving you any exemptions. He is saying that as much as possible, he is not using any of those verbiages. He is just saying, make money. So one might want to ask him, why? Money does not give me everything. So why are you saying this? Why are you giving this as a dictum? And he gives the response in the second sentence. He says, Serenar serukku arukkum ekku adanil kooriyadil, which means that in all our lives, everybody here, some of you are probably beginners, entrants, some of you are in your 20s, some of us are in our 50s, Some people probably little older. Some are very rich. Some are average. Some are mediocre. Whatever position that you are in, there is one thing that's common for all of us. There is some humiliation that all of us have seen in our life. Some rejection that all of us have experienced. I don't think anybody would stand up and say that in my entire life there is absolutely no humiliation or rejection that I've seen. I don't think anybody will make that statement. Am I right or wrong? So some of us share that. Some of us don't even dare sharing that. But what Valluvar says is, there are these people who look through you, not looked at you. Have you had this experience? I have had this experience. So when you're walking in a crowd, so there are people who are much more powerful, who are much wealthier, who are probably in higher tiers of the society, who you smiled at, they have not even acknowledged your presence. It's okay if they have not seen you, but your heart tells you that that person has seen me. That person knows me. But yet, for some reason, they did not think that you were important enough to spend that few fractions of a second to share a smile with. So they have just seen through you and they walked. Valluvar calls this a humiliation. Have you experienced it? Of course you have. Most of us have. Maybe one or two might not have, but most of us have. Valluvar says that when you face a humiliation in the society, either because of the place that you were born, or because of the wealth status that you are in, or because of whatever reason it is, there is only one way to cut the ego in the mind of the person who looked through you. And that's nothing but wealth. That's what he says. Seiga பொருளை செருனர் செருக்கு அறுக்கும் எஃகு அதனில் கூறியதில். There is no other weapon that is sharper than your wealth to silence the minds and the body language of those who did not even acknowledge your presence. Just think about how powerful this couplet can be. That is the starting of everything. Why do you have to make money? Of course, you have got Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All of us have read it. All of us have written it in our respective papers in whatever examination. So it gives you food, it gives you clothing, it gives you housing, all that is fine. But when you cross that step, when you're in the second step, for you to be reasonably respected in the society, wealth is a must. That's exactly how Valluvar defines accumulating or earning wealth. That is the only one thing that gives you your deserved place in the society. So first of all, as a society, I have an interesting observation. All of us love money. For some of the people who understand Tamil here, we say kasu, panam, duddu, money. All four stand for money. Right? Everybody wants to be rich and wealthy. But as a society, when we portray who's a villain in a movie, just think about it. Think about a Tamil movie, think about a Hindi movie, think about a Telugu movie, whatever it is. The heroes are more often than not laborers, poor people, struggling and struggling. So they'll change. In one movie, the hero will be a fisherman. The next movie, he will be a potter. Third movie, he'll be a hero, farmer. But the villain never changes. Villain is that wealthy guy who wears those costly suits even in the middle of the house. So he's always wealthy. As a society, we somehow want to make a dig at the person who has accumulated wealth. But what's interesting is that all of us want to be in that place. So first and foremost, to you and to your clients, the thing that has to reach them is that we have to make money. Otherwise, there is no place for us in this earth. That is our duty. You may try and you may fail, but did you try is the moot question. So that's one couplet that I want to carry with me. The second, most of you, I am at least not able to see people who are very, very young and new entrants. So you're all probably reasonably well into your respective areas. Most of you are like, I've traveled so far, there's no way to get back now. I can't move to control or complaints, right? Like you did. I was an investment banker for, I don't know, probably 6 months to 9 months, and that was all. So my first interaction with my boss was, my boss said, you have to do cold calling. Who to cold call? Take your phone, open your contacts, and call everybody that you have there. I had about 700 contacts at that point of time. What was my success rate? What do you think? Zero. Zero. My own sisters, my own brothers, zero. But then, how do you go and tell your boss that this is a stupid idea, it won't work? So you have to tell your boss that, brilliant idea, boss. Brilliant. I'll have to just figure out a way that it works. That's how you have to position it. So sometimes, the challenge for us as a community, or you as a community, is that you have to wait for the right customer, the right client, and the right deal. It could be a very difficult wait for you. So I'm going to talk about the second Tirukkural, which really helped me for whatever I waited for in life. So he's talking about a river. On the banks of the river, there is a crane. All of you know a crane, right? In Tamil, it's called a kokku. It's a crane which is standing on the banks of the river. So it looks like the crane is pretty hungry, right? And waiting for the fish to come. So Valluvar walks by that way and he has a conversation with his crane. So he's asking the crane, what are you waiting for? I'm mighty hungry. So I'm just waiting for the fish. So Valluvar sees the stream. He sees a lot of fish going there. So he asks the crane, what are you waiting for? The fish is here. Just eat your fish. The crane says, yes, I am hungry. I need a fish to eat. But it's not this fish. I'm waiting for my fish to come. Define your fish. It's a big one. It will come. How do you know it will come? It has to come. I will wait. So then Valluvar tells this crane, Valluvar never met a crane. I'm just extending the couplet so that there is a narrative and there is a storytelling to what I'm saying. So Valluvar then asks the crane, okay, I understand you're waiting for a big fish, but just to quench your hunger, why don't you just take 1 or 2 small fish? All of us do that, right? I don't know when you had lunch. Today I had lunch at about 1 o'clock. But I was hungry at 12 itself. So what do you think I would have done? I just munched a couple of biscuits or something like that. Many of you would have done it today also. So when you're hungry, you know your food is coming, but nothing wrong in taking that one bite, open a chips packet or whatever, right? This is exactly what Valluvar told the crane. Just take those small fish. Crane looked at Valluvar and told him, I won't. I won't. I may die of hunger, but I'm not going to take a small fish. Why? Because as I take the small fish and as I'm munching it, if my big fish comes, I'm not going to have enough time to spit this and then go for it. I am not going to do anything that is going to take my attention away from my goal. This couplet goes like this. Kokkokka kumbum paruvattu, matradhan kuttokka seertha idathu. Just be like a crane. That's all that he says. Wait for what your dream is, because it will knock at your door one day. Waiting can be painful. Waiting can be like, you will see some of your colleagues just going ahead of you in whatever ladder that you're aspiring to raise. But if you know, what are you waiting for? If you know what your dream is, all that you need to do is that believe in the power of the universe to grant what you really dream for true. It will come. But if you just develop hobbies and spend your time in those hobbies, then your fish will come and you probably won't even notice it. So there's something for people who are waiting. I always take this analogy of a crane that is waiting. Who knows when the big fish will come? But the crane will wait. But the interesting part about this couplet is the next line, which says that, Matradhan kuttokka seertha idathu. He says that if at all you find your fish, the one that you're waiting for, then you are not going to let it go. That's what the crane said. Have you ever heard of any crane that has really missed attacking a fish? Never once. Why? Because it's like a penance. The crane is just waiting for the right food, and when the right food came, it will not miss it. So all of us, when there is a dream, it could be in the initial years, the dream for getting into the right organization, getting into the right product set, finding the right client, building the trust from the right client, and the right client trusting you. All of this take time. But when you wait patiently, believe that it will happen. If while you're waiting, you want to do something else, then your energy, your enthusiasm, your time will just go off in that. The third couplet, I'm mindful of the time. The third couplet I really love and I wanted to share on a lighter note probably. There have been recent internet viral sensations. The latest one is a little monkey by name Punch. Heard about it? Saw the videos? Sorry? I have written about it. Yo, ivlo serious investment ondu dhaan pesuvingla vera edhum neenga pesa maathinga. Yeah, correct. Correct. So let me, I'm sure you've all seen it, but since I did not get an overwhelming response, I'm going to spend a minute to tell you what really happened. Ishika Zoo in Japan has a monkey. It's a macaw monkey. He's 7 months old. And he's in the custody of the caretakers, but this monkey has been abandoned by the mother and the clan of the monkeys right at birth. Why? Maternal instinct is common among primates. When I say primates, the animals, right? Maternal instinct is very strong in all the animals, especially mammals. But there are certain aspects of the animal behavior for which science is yet to find the answer. There are some mothers that abandon their children right at birth. So this little monkey, 7-month-old monkey, his name is Punch, was an abandoned monkey. Not only abandoned by the mother, but abandoned by the tribe and the clan. The entire monkey group is against this little 7-month-old little baby. So they are hitting him, they are throwing him off, and whenever he tries to make those friendly gestures to be a part of the group, he's always pushed away. He's hit. So he squeaks and he runs. The zoo authorities thought that a very young monkey baby like this needs the mother's body for emotional support as well as physical support. So they came out with a plan. They gave him a toy, what we call as a plush toy. It's the toy of an orange orangutan. This toy was created by IKEA. You all know IKEA. So it's an IKEA toy which they gave him. This little Punch immediately grabbed that toy. And from then on till today, everywhere he goes, he's going with that toy. So when other monkeys are chasing him, he's finding a solace in this little toy. So this video went viral. Just a month ago, another video went viral about a penguin. You all saw that. Yeah. He was called the nihilist penguin because he walked to the mountains. The lone penguin, now the lone monkey. So the world is crying for Punch. Everybody is writing letters. People queue up at the zoo in Japan to see this little monkey. And hundreds of people have purchased this toy from IKEA and they are sending it to the zoo. Why? Because in case his own toy is torn or damaged, they don't want this monkey to suffer. Ironical, isn't it? We all have orphans right in our next street. And now we are crying for an orphan monkey who is in a zoo in Japan. Ironical, but that's what internet is about. You never know which will become a viral or a sensation. So when this is going viral and everybody is talking about it, I just correlated it with a Kural. Sometimes all of us need something to hold on to in life. Sometimes it may look a little stupid. People may call it an emotional drama or whatever it is. But all of us need some kind of a support. Now, let me ask you this question. I've seen it in my own office, in many offices that I have visited and I have worked for. There will be people who are not accepted within groups in every organization. A lot of your leaders, just think about your own teams. I don't know, maybe you have teams? So maybe 10 people working, 100 people working, 800 people working. Just think about your teams. Are they homogeneous as they appear to be? Not always. There will always be outliers who are not accepted within those groups. In your lunchrooms, in your organization, if your lunchtime is, let's say, from 1 to 1:30, there will always be people who will come at 1:29 and eat alone. You see it in your children's schools or colleges. Maybe your own children will be like that sometimes. Not accepted by the group. Outliers, outcasts, migrants, where we secretly communicate this language saying that you don't belong here. Why? Either because of language or geography, caste, creed, the way they speak, the way they look, whatever be the reason. But there are always people who are not accepted. I see many women here. Some of you, if you're like 40 plus or 50 plus, you would have felt it in your own households when you get married and get into a house. A new daughter-in-law not accepted in an established setup in a family. Same may be valid for sons-in-laws too. Not accepted in the father-in-law's house which is established, right? So all of us have gone through this kind of an ostracization, as I call it. As leaders, what do you do? As leaders, what do you want to do? Are you ensuring that everybody within your team is equally respected? If they are not, are you giving them that privilege or a promotion, assignment, or a task that makes them feel important amongst the others? I think the supreme leadership quality is to treat everybody equally. So I'm just going to end with a Tirukural that really taught me this principle. He says that பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும். Thank you. பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும். Everybody is equal. That's all it means. And this concept, we talking about it in 2026, there is nothing, it's easy to talk about it in this year. But 2 millennia ago, this man spoke and he said that பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும். But if he stops with that, he is not a man with the kind of wisdom that we will appreciate and we want to follow. In the second line, he puts a clause to it. He says that where they can be differentiated is only by the way they are delivering their work. பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும் சிறப்பொவ்வா செய்தொழில் வேற்றுமையான். If at all there is any difference, it's only in the way that they deliver their work. So, all of us are equal, but if there are certain differences in the way we get the business, we get our clients, or the way we speak to the client, then that's the only difference which depends on the way we are delivering our work. But basically, all of us are equal. பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும் is a fantastic and a fabulous statement. So let me end by saying that you as investment advisors, investment bankers, people who provide counseling, we are standing at one of the most turbulent times in history. All of us do not have most of the answers for what our clients are demanding from us. So the entire world is now saying that data centers will be the next victory for us. But is it going to happen? Or is it the next .com 2.0 bubble that will burst sometime in 2027? Nobody has an answer. So there are companies which claim that their profit is $1 billion, but their valuation is $29 billion. The gap of the $28 billion is all in somebody's mind. It's all in some Excel sheets. It's all somewhere hidden. Is it going to make sense, and are you going to advise your customers to go and invest in that? A firm in North Dakota is proudly announcing that its AI tools are going to remove 10,000 white-collared people from somewhere in Manhattan. So the company will declare a victory. But let me tell you, what will happen is that out of these 10,000 people, at least 10% of them will stop paying their mortgage. And when the mortgage loan repayments become a risk, that is what we call as the canary in the coal mine. You all know what is a canary in the coal mine, right? In coal mine earlier days, workers used to carry canaries with them. Canary is a small bird, chittukuruvi. So when there is lack of oxygen, the canary will die first. And then the workers will have enough time to rush out of the coal mines. So in an economy, the canary in the coal mine is a fall in the mortgage repayments. So that's what happened in 2008. We don't want a repeat of it. But when I see my colleague Sudha here. Hi, Sudha. So you don't want to see a repeat of it in 27, but that's what your customers are asking. Within your mind, you want to tell them, just do what your grandmother did. And what did your grandmother do? She was probably saving 1 gram in 1 or 2 months. If she has done it for 30 years, today, you would have had about 300 grams of gold with you. In a very small middle income or a lower income household, 30 grams of gold today is almost like 50 lakh rupees, which is a big fortune. So tell your customers what you really believe is going to help them. Not what is going to help you, but what is going to help your customers. So I'm going to end with the last couplet where he said, Poyyamai poyyamai aatrin, arampira seyyamai seyyamai nandru. If you're not able to do anything which is good, you don't have time to donate, you don't have time to do good things. I just don't have time for anything. What do I do? So he says that just be true to yourself. If you are true to yourself, then that is the peak of any ethics that any society can preach about. So with that, thank you so much for this opportunity. Lovely talking to you all.